I wanted to now talk a little bit about working in a psych hospital. As I am moisturizing my hair with this lovely coconut oil, which is also very good for your skin, but anyway, so I have exciting news, guys. Actually, well, no, I won't share it just yet, but I will come back with another video, guys, and I will talk about my exciting news. So guys, I wanted to talk about my experience working at a psychiatric hospital. I wanted to talk a little bit about my role and what I do, and just kind of give you guys an insider's opinion on it. The first thing that I'd like to say is that if you guys have an opportunity to gain experience in different environments, a psychiatric hospital is a perfect place to kind of gain some of that experience. I can tell you that I've worked in behavioral health before. Now I'm working in a psychiatric hospital, and the two extremes are very different. They're definitely two different extremes. I feel that working in a psychiatric hospital, which is not always a voluntary place, I've gained a unique perspective. I am able to see people with a varying degree of disorders. I'm able to see them at different severities within those disorders, and I've had to hone in on my ability to connect with people quickly so that we can actually get things done. I work in the intake department, so I am a clinician that is the first point of contact for community members when they're coming into our facility in crisis. And we take patients who either walk in for an assessment, so they believe that they need help and they're voluntarily walking into the facility for an assessment, hoping for either inpatient or outpatient services. And I also see patients who come in on an involuntary basis, which means they were either at a facility or a hospital, a nursing home, a hospice, anything like that, or the police brought them from jail or whatever, and they are in crisis. They were taken to the emergency room first and assessed at some level by a clinician at the hospital, and that person completed what's called a petition and certification for that individual to be admitted to an inpatient facility. So one thing that you guys need to know is that people have to be either voluntary or they have to be petitioned to be held in a psychiatric hospital in order for them to have an inpatient stay. And not every facility does like a 48-hour hold or a 72-hour hold. I don't know if that used to be the policy, but now I know for us it's a minimum 5-day stay, and it doesn't count the weekends. So we're talking 5 business days basically. The petitions and the certifications are sent over to the court. The judge will review the petition and hear the argument about why. We provide clinical details. We provide the hospital paperwork that shows the person's presentation at the time that admission was recommended, and they will approve or disapprove that. So patients can also sign what's called a 5-day release. A lot of patients don't know about this 5-day release, but basically if they come in and they're coming in as involuntary, or even if they're coming in voluntary, they can say, hey, I want to sign a 5-day. So the 5-day means that we cannot keep them any longer than the 5 days. Again, doesn't include the weekends. I don't know why. Probably because a lot of times they won't necessarily get to see a psychiatrist within the first 2 days if they come in on a weekend. So I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about my job and what I'm responsible for doing, and then what happens from there. So first, we could get a notification, what we call a referral, from another facility that has a patient. Sorry, y'all, I'm trying to set this up so I can actually rub the oil through my hair while I'm talking. So we will get what's called a referral. And guys, I apologize. I'm gonna be like paying attention to this so I can just get it done. You know, multitask. Okay. All right. So we'll get a call from another facility stating that they want to make a referral. They will give us a bunch of information about the potential patient, as well as what the presentation is. With our facility specifically, our programs start at age 13 and they go up. Our hospital is fairly new, so we don't have all the units active, but we will pretty much take any type of presentation depending on the milieu of our units. So if we are at or close to capacity for how many patients we can have on a particular unit, as we start to get... Okay, I don't know what was up with that. I don't know why my camera cut off. But anyway, we will weigh the acuity of the units to make a determination if this person might throw off the milieu of the unit before we accept. We will take both adolescents and adults with aggressive behaviors. We try to screen out anyone who isn't functioning at their chronological age, just because we don't have the appropriate program. And specifically, you know, it's really hard to put people on one-on-ones and things like that due to staffing. So we'll take the referral, we'll request the hospital paperwork. We will also request all of their labs. The toxicology has to be included. We need that person to be medically clear because our particular facility is not a med-surg facility, meaning we don't treat any type of medical issues. They would have to be sent down the street to the hospital, which is about 4 minutes away from our facility, to have any type of medical treatment done. So we don't take anyone with any medical issues because we want people to, of course, be safe. We will also, if it is applicable, we want to have the SAS report. So depending on the type of insurance that people have, if they have straight Medicaid and they are under 21 or over, or I'm sorry, between the ages of 21 and 65, that's a better way to say it. So between the ages of 21 and 65, if they have straight Medicaid, we need to reach out to SAS. Oh, I'm saying that wrong. See, y'all? Okay. If the person is between the ages of 21 and 65, we don't accept straight Medicaid for them. They would have to pay the cash cost for each day of service, so we have to present them with that. If they're under the age of 21 and over the age of 65 or 65 and up, then they have to be SAS'd, which means we have to call the SAS agencies and have them speak with them, assess them, and determine whether or not inpatient services are recommended. That is just a law. We don't make that rule, but it's the law. So we will do that. And then once we get everything, we send that patient's paperwork to what we call a nurse to nurse, where the nurse at our facility and the nurse at the referring facility will speak to each other. They will ask appropriate questions about that person's medical history, current medical state, and then they will determine from a medical perspective if our facility should accept them. Once the nurse to nurse is complete, they will call down to our intake department and say, yes, it's okay to accept this person. So once that's done, we will ask the referring facility to go ahead and send that person over to us. And they usually transport by ambulance. In some instances, depending on the size of the community and where this person is coming from, they may arrive by town car, which can be problematic if somebody is in a manic state or experiencing psychosis. I don't know what they do to get those people in the town car, but sometimes getting them out of the town car can be difficult. For our walk-ins, the process is similar but different. So when somebody is walking into our facility, the first thing that we have to do is to take their vitals. We take their vitals, we do a breathalyzer, and we do a urine drug screen at our facility. Now with COVID, I will tell you guys it's a little bit different in that with COVID, we are requiring that everyone go out for a medical clearance. We want them to have a COVID test, but then also too, they have to be medically cleared as well. So we're kind of doing both of those things. Generally, we will talk with the patient first just to kind of get an idea of what's going on with them. And then we determine next steps before we assess. Some people do it different. Some clinicians will assess right away as soon as the person comes right back. That way, once we send them out for medical clearance and they come back, you know, all we have to do is sign their consent forms for admission, and then we can get them up to their assigned unit. So it kind of just depends. Each clinician may have a process. Why it's important, guys, for someone to have a breathalyzer is because you cannot assess a person who is under the influence, okay? They have no idea what they're doing, what they're signing, what they're agreeing to. It may be a chemically induced state. It's the same when someone is really hopped up on substances as well. We send them over to the hospital, of course, to have them get a little time under their belt, so they might be a little more able to complete an assessment in an appropriate state. What do you need, sir? Go lay down, Louis. Go. Okay. All right, so the person goes off, they get a medical clearance, they come back to our facility. At this point, we will wand them. We'll get them off the gurney from the EMT. We'll wand them for safety, which means, you know, it's like the handheld metal detector type thing. We don't want them to go up to any of our units with any contraband. We take all of their personal belongings. They will go to our security team, who will search their items. They will screen them for any harmful things. They will remove any items from what's going to eventually wind up upstairs with the patient. They will take out anything that has strings, anything that would allow them to harm themselves or someone else. They will wash their items, because we do have a large homeless population here. So we do get a lot of people who are displaced and don't have a home, so they may have all of their belongings with them. We also just want to make sure that if anybody has like bed bugs or anything like that, that we're not taking those items directly up to the unit and infecting the units. So security will take all of their personal belongings. They all get tagged as soon as they come in through our intake department, and then they are off to security for all of those checks. The patient winds up getting their items probably within the hour or two, so that they don't have to walk around in hospital gowns. We get them changed into hospital gowns, and then our assessment starts. Our assessment is pretty in-depth, and we are taking a family history, social history, substance use history. We're also looking at current, you know, usage, things like that. And then we talk about any trauma, abuse, violence, any substance issues that the patient might have. We talk about family history of family history of mental health issues or substance use. And then we go into each one of the categories where we assess the person for any type of psychosis, depression, anxiety, homicidal ideation, suicidal ideation. And like I said, we get a lot of people who come in and they're experiencing psychosis. So they may be experiencing hallucinations or delusions. We get a lot of people who are suicidal. I would say probably 85% are either suicidal ideation or homicidal ideation. We get a lot of people who are dual, meaning that they have a substance use issue, or they have a mental health issue as well. So those things are coming. We get a lot of adolescents, and right now actually our adolescent population has increased tenfold. We kind of think that we are seeing a trend where the kids are kind of talking to each other and saying, hey, say these particular phrases and you'll be in the hospital. And so the kids are using the inpatient program as a way to socialize. So, and that's just, you know, something that us clinicians are talking about, because we're seeing kids who are having a lot of suicidal ideation, but not all of them. I don't know, it just seems fishy. I'll just leave it at that. I won't go too deep. But we take suicidal ideations very seriously. So if someone comes in and they have suicidal ideation, we will, if they cannot contract for safety, they will go into our inpatient program. So we will go through this in-depth assessment. We will make sure that we're getting down all of the presenting all of their presenting symptoms. We will assess them based on, you know, how they're presenting with us. We write our clinical assessment of them, and then we will diagnose them with an initial diagnosis just based on our encounter with them. When someone comes into intake, guys, they will spend probably 2 hours with the clinician, more if they're in like a psychotic state, if they're in an extremely depressive state where, you know, they may be tearful, dysphoric, you know, those types of things. So, and an intake can take up to 3 hours. I would say, I don't know if I've ever kept anyone longer than 3 hours. And it's not just their assessment. They're going through the assessment, but then they're also signing consent forms. And there's a great deal of consents that have to go in, because you want to inform them of their rights. You want to have them sign themselves involuntarily. And even though they may have come from the hospital with the petition, it's just easier for the treatment team at our facility if someone is willing to just go ahead and sign in voluntarily. Sometimes people refuse. Sometimes people don't want to do that. So, you know, they ask for a 5-day, or we have to stamp their documents as refusal to sign, which does happen sometimes. We get consent for their treatment, their assessment. We get permission to bill their insurance. You know, there's tons of insurance forms, guys, I'll tell you. And in our intake department, we are responsible for the initial prior authorization for treatment, which is a whole other situation, but we do have to get that as well. We explain their rights, because we do not restrict rights of patients. You want to make sure that they truly understand that. You go over HIPAA guidelines with them. You provide them with their rights and responsibilities for while they're in treatment, and expectations of them while they're in treatment. You provide them with the agencies that they can contact if they determine that their rights have been restricted in any way. And then there's one consent form that's super duper long, and it talks about all the ins and outs. There's probably like 30 items on that. It talks about us taking a picture, them agreeing to an HIV test if that's something that needs to occur. It talks about being transported, day passes, that our facility is a drug-free, alcohol-free, nicotine-free environment. We tell them what things they can have and not have while they're up on the units. You know, nothing that can cause them harm, nothing flammable, no strings, things like that. Electronic devices, we don't like people to bring their personal electronic devices from home because we don't want to be responsible. If someone is aggressive or violent, we explain to them that, yeah, your insurance is paying for your stay, but your insurance is not going to pay if you're punching holes in the walls, things like that. So we go through all those consents, and then we give them information about what they can expect up on the unit. We do explain to them that it is a locked facility 24 hours a day. They are able to move around in their particular units, but we do not cross units. They will go down to the cafeteria 3 times a day for food. They'll get snacks and things on the unit. Phone times are scheduled, things like that. So once all that is complete, we will get the person up on the unit, and we are responsible for putting their chart together. So all of the documents that we've had signed, our clinical assessment, our clinical notes, all of those things go upstairs with us and the patient, and then we do a physical handoff. That physical handoff will determine who now is responsible for that patient as they have been admitted to the facility. Now, we have 2 green sheets that we use as part of our handout. The green sheets will tell us whether or not that person is on Q10s, because as a policy, they are monitored on the unit every 15 minutes. But when someone is on Q10s, we put a reason why that person may be on Q10s, which means they need to be monitored more frequently, every 10 minutes as opposed to every 15 minutes. And it's either due to some type of, what do I want to call it? Some kind of special circumstances that we want to watch out for. If that person is suicidal, if they have suicidal ideation with plan or intent, and that person will do anything. If that person self-harms, we want to make sure that people have eyes on them at all times. If that person has homicidal ideation, we want to make sure that we are doing that. If that person has been in a domestic violence situation or an abusive situation, whether that be physical or something else, we want to make sure that we're checking in with them, making sure that they're doing okay, that type of thing. So if we deem that that person needs to be on Q10s, when we take the patient upstairs, we will hand off the Q10 sheet that shows the checks that we have done with that person the entire time that they're in intake. We determine whether or not that person has been calm and cooperative during their time down there, and every 10 minutes how their behaviors may have or may not have changed. Oh, okay. Sorry, I had just got a message. So we will hand that off to the mental health tech. And then we have another green sheet for the nurse, which identifies that we've done all the things that we need to do: wanding, taking a picture, checking the person initially for contraband. Is that person suicidal? What unit they're being assigned to and why they're being assigned to that particular unit. Any special information that the nursing team needs to know. The person will then be taken by nursing and handed off to that unit, and then we just put their file together. So that's kind of the introduction to working in a psychiatric hospital as an intake clinician, who is the first line of sight, first initial contact with that client.